Huh? I filled up the fridge with beers. There's only this much left. One day, when inviting a neighboring family over for a barbecue, the beer that was supposed to be plentiful in the fridge was found to be nearly gone. My husband Anthony, socially adept and competent outside the house, is quite strict just with our family and easily gets upset over minor things. I tried to stay as calm as possible and addressed Anthony, telling him frankly that we were about to run out of chilled beers. Upon hearing this, Anthony, who had been in a good mood from drinking, instantly turned furious. His anger triggered, Anthony said, "Serving guests warm beer is disrespectful. Don't show your face again." Taking advantage of the fact that we were out of sight, he forcefully grabbed my arm and started walking in the opposite direction without saying a word. I had a bad feeling, but raising my voice would ruin the cheerful atmosphere, and resisting could escalate the situation, so I had no choice but to follow quietly. Reluctantly, I followed Anthony as he pulled my arm. Then, Anthony opened the door to a dark storage shed and pushed me in. The storage shed on a summer day was as hot as a sauna, with incredible humidity, so I immediately ran towards the exit. However, Anthony quickly closed the door and used a long-handled broom as a bar to prevent it from opening from the inside. "Open the door!" I pleaded several times, but there was no sign of Anthony opening the door. "Reflect on your actions in here for a while." With that, Anthony left, laughing villainously as if he were a character from a movie. My name is Evelyn. I live with my husband, who is a sales manager at a major real estate company, and our 20-year-old daughter. My husband, Anthony, is 57 and I am 55, so we are close in age. Originally, I also worked at the same company as Anthony. We had what you might call an office romance. Anthony was everyone's dream guy, and I never thought he was in my league, but thankfully, he proposed, and we started a family. When we first became a family, I remember feeling ticklish from being envied by people from all around. At first, I was over the moon and every day was filled with happiness. However, as we got used to living together, Anthony's true character began to show. Our daughter, Nora, graduated high school and is now attending a fashion college, commuting by train early every morning. Seeing her study what she loves, looking lively and happy, makes me look forward to her future. That's why, for the sake of my daughter, I prioritize living a peaceful life day by day. Our family lives in an area where many families from the same company or related companies reside, thanks to the housing allowance from the company, which means we have many acquaintances around. In times of trouble, it's great that we can quickly help each other out, but for better or worse, news travels fast. Our family, in particular, gets along well with Dylan's family, who live 2 doors down and are colleagues of my husband. Like us, they are a family of 3, and their daughter, Stella, being the same age as Nora, has been close friends with her since childhood. Dylan, the husband, is always polite and never fails to greet us during routine activities like taking out the trash. Even though he's the same age as Anthony, his character seems unbelievably nice. Lillian, his wife, is a year younger than me, and we go shopping and on outings together like friends. She works as a legal assistant and is a dependable sisterly figure, often giving me advice. Of course, I've brought up Anthony before, but I've always wrapped the conversations in layers of discretion. Honestly, it's too embarrassing to talk about with anyone. I truly appreciated Lillian's presence when our daughters had a small misunderstanding. When deciding on their futures after attending the same school from elementary to high school, there was a conflict. Initially, they both pledged to pursue fashion design and worked hard on exam preparations, but Stella decided to switch to cosmetology at the last minute, which made Nora feel betrayed, leading her to stop speaking to Stella. Seeing Nora struggle with accepting Stella's decision and hating herself for it, all I could do was watch. Lillian facilitated a discussion that allowed both girls to fully express their feelings, resolving the discord. Her calm mediation, listening, and ensuring things didn't get too heated, was truly memorable, almost as if counseling was her calling. Even though their paths diverged, respecting each other's dreams might have deepened their friendship. Stella, like Nora, commutes to school early in the morning by train and seems very busy. Occasionally, when their departure times align, they ride their bikes together to the nearest station, making me grateful to Lillian for preventing their friendship from souring. As a result, they are both aiming for similar jobs, so we, as mothers, are secretly hoping that one day they will work together. It's just a fantasy between the two of their mothers, kept secret from them. Aside from Dylan's family, we only greet other company-related families, so I'm not fully aware of how many live nearby. Having a good relationship with Lillian satisfies my social needs. However, there are several events a year that I can't say that about. Where Anthony invites his company-related neighbors for a barbecue or tea time. Due to his role as a sales manager, Anthony often leads the gatherings, usually at our home. Anthony's vanity and impatience mean I constantly have to be on my toes, which is exhausting, but it's become a tradition we can't easily stop. Last year, when we held a simple party in the winter to celebrate the new year, we had to open our home to cook and entertain, which left us feeling quite tired both physically and mentally. Other housewives offer to help, but Anthony's mood becomes visibly bad because it doesn't look good to let customers help, so I have no choice but to decline, which is another factor that builds up fatigue. It's ironic that Anthony, admired as a supervisor at work, shows his selfish and authoritarian side only at home. And now, with a barbecue planned for the end of May, I'm dreading the workload and the heat. The guests bringing their own drinks and food that would be shared would definitely lighten my load, and Lillian suggested it once, but Anthony, wanting to show off, wouldn't hear of it. I've learned it's easier to keep the peace and not upset Anthony by objecting, so I stay quiet. It's just a few days of hardship, after all. The barbecue is quickly approaching. Anthony has tasked me with ensuring everything is prepared perfectly, but perfect is daunting. As what constitutes perfect for Anthony can fluctuate wildly. Sometimes, he'll suddenly deem unacceptable what he previously approved, or vice versa. The most reliable method is to have him check everything in advance, but even that's no guarantee. When I mentioned going shopping for supplies, "I'm busy with work, so it's all on you. Don't you dare embarrass me," he said and went out. Since the number of attendees varies, we always check who'll be joining the barbecue in advance. Luckily, this time it seems only Dylan's family will be coming. Knowing their preferences makes planning the menu and drinks easier and lifts my spirits a bit. Considering the temperature, I need to stock the fridge to its limit with drinks to avoid running out. The family fridge was filled to the brim with beer. After checking with Anthony, he said, that should be plenty. Just to be safe, I also prepared some at room temperature, anticipating we might run out due to the forecasted heat. Since it's forecast to be hot, we might run out, so it would be perfect. On the day, I started preparing the main ingredients for the barbecue. Having cut everything into bite-sized pieces the night before, all that was left was to arrange them on plates. With the temperature expected to rise to summery levels, I made sure the air conditioning was on so everyone could cool off inside. Just as I was about to finish the preparations, the doorbell rang. Could that be Stella and her family? I'll go greet them. Please do. When Nora went to the entrance, she found Lillian, Dylan, and Stella, all smiles and decked out in sun protection gear, hats, and arm covers. A bit later, when Anthony made his way to the entrance and Dylan noticed him, he bowed his head politely. Thank you for having us. Anthony also smiled contentedly. make yourselves at home," and went back inside to grab a beer. After watching the adults finish their exchange, Nora didn't go back inside, but led the 3 guests around the side of the house to the backyard where the barbecue and canopy were set up. I handed Nora the plates of food through the large window facing the garden, and she skillfully arranged them on the outdoor table. The barbecue kicked off with the fathers and daughters happily sharing updates. Anthony and Dylan talked about company performance and sales results of their teams, occasionally mixing in jokes as they conversed earnestly. Nora and Stella were excitedly discussing the latest makeup techniques and recommending cosmetics to each other. While grilling meat and vegetables, I caught up with Lillian, who was enjoying her beer next to me. "Did you hear? The house around the corner just got a cat." "Really? A cat, huh? Nice." We chatted about trivial matters while serving the cooked food onto everyone's plates. When Stella said, "Auntie, no eggplant for me, please," Lillian promptly responded, "Don't be picky, eat everything." Ah. Seeing Stella reluctantly try the eggplant made Nora laugh. I thought this barbecue, being among close friends, would be a pleasant time. But soon after, I'd realize reality wasn't so sweet. Once the barbecue and beers put Anthony in a good mood, he demanded, "Bring more beer." I went to get more chilled beer from the fridge, only to face an unexpected situation. Despite having filled the fridge with beers, there were only a few left. I wondered when so many had been taken. Maybe the beer was consumed faster than I anticipated while I was busy preparing the food. The weather was hot, and the conversation was lively, so it couldn't be helped, but Anthony surely hadn't noticed. Yet, I knew from past experiences that once he realized we were almost out of cold beers, he would undoubtedly blame and lash out at me. Thinking that putting the remaining beers in the fridge now would at least be better than keeping them at room temperature, I moved all the remaining beers to the fridge. Then, trying to remain calm, I approached Anthony and said, "Honey," informing him straightforwardly that we were about to run out of chilled beers. Anthony's face, which had been jovial from the alcohol, instantly turned to anger upon hearing my words. Taking advantage of our location out of sight from the barbecue, he forcefully grabbed my arm and began walking in the opposite direction without saying a word. A bad feeling washed over me, but I knew raising my voice would only spoil the mood, and resisting could make things escalate, so I had no choice but to follow quietly. Reluctantly, I followed Anthony to the front of a storage shed on the opposite side of the garden. When we reached the shed on the opposite side of the garden, Anthony stopped and turned around, still holding my arm, saying, "Why didn't you keep restocking them?" Letting his emotions take over. Then, pointing at me, he said, "Serving guests warm beer is disrespectful. You stay out of sight now." He then opened the door to the pitch-dark storage shed and pushed me inside. The shed was sweltering like a sauna, with overwhelming humidity, so I instinctively ran to the door. However, Anthony quickly closed the door and secured it from the outside using a long-handled broom, preventing it from being opened from the inside. "Open the door!" I pleaded several times, but there was no sign of Anthony opening the door. Then, "Reflect in here for a while," he said dismissively and walked away, laughing villainously like a character from a movie. Panicking about the potential danger due to the heat, I repeatedly banged the door and shouted, "Somebody help!" But the likelihood of being heard from the shed, positioned far from the garden, was slim. To make things worse, shouting so much made me use up unnecessary energy, and I started to feel unwell. Having been grilling food without much hydration, I might have been on the verge of dehydration. Trapped with no hope of rescue, I wondered how I could escape. The darkness made my mood plummet further, and my breathing became shallow. It was too hard to stand, so I crouched down and leaned against a pillar, trying to escape the hot air as much as possible. With a gloomy feeling, I sit back down, hugging my knees. Huddled up, I lifted my face and noticed a water tank stored for emergencies at eye level. Grateful for any drinkable water, I hastily opened the tank and gulped it down. The water wasn't cold, rather lukewarm, but it was enough for me at that moment. It might help me manage for a bit, but I had no way of knowing how much longer the barbecue would last. With lingering unease, I closed my eyes. Meanwhile, Anthony, having completely forgotten about locking me in the shed, was enjoying a lively conversation and jokes with Dylan. I heard from Nora later that he was in a good mood and was making jokes, so I can kind of imagine it. Around 5 hours passed, and as the day began to fade, prompted by Lillian's suggestion, they started to clean up. Noticing Anthony's pale complexion, Lillian expressed concern.
Is something wrong? You look pale.
To which Anthony replied, "It's nothing," with a strained smile and quickly walked away from the garden. By then, Anthony must have been overwhelmed with thoughts of me locked in the shed. Intending only a short lesson but realizing hours had passed. Fearing the repercussions of his actions, he hurried to the shed. Tentatively, he removed the broom that was blocking the door and slowly opened it. But upon fully opening the door, he found no sign of me. Puzzled and concerned, Anthony switched on the light, only to see an unfamiliar woman standing with her back to him. Startled by a sudden, unexplained presence on his property, he exclaimed,
"Ah! Who are you?"
However, there was no response from the woman. Becoming increasingly angry at the woman who doesn't respond or turn around no matter how many times he calls out to her, Anthony approached the woman and patted her on the shoulder.
"Excuse me."
Shockingly, the woman's head fell off and rolled to the ground. Paralyzed with horror, Anthony collapsed to the floor, speechless and immobile from the shock. As he sat, frozen by fear, he suddenly heard the door close behind him. Confused, he quickly realized he was now the one trapped inside the shed. Panicking, he rushed to the door.
"Open the door, please!"
His plea for help echoed from inside, but then, from outside.
"You reflect on your actions there."
Lillian's voice must have been heard. Not knowing where I had gone or what was happening, Anthony was now the one trapped in the shed. Actually, Lillian had noticed my absence during the barbecue. I had often confided in her and had told a bit about Anthony's behavior. Feeling uneasy about not seeing me around, Lillian decided to search the property. Fortunately, Anthony and Dylan, being in high spirits from the drinks, didn't notice her leave. She informed Stella and Nora before starting her search. Finding no sign of me inside the house, she headed towards the shed opposite the garden, noticing a broom unnaturally propped against the door. Approaching with a bad feeling, she sensed someone inside. Knocking, she asked, "Is someone there?" Hearing my faint response, she hurriedly removed the broom, opened the door, and rescued me. Observing my weakened state, Lillian, deducing Anthony was to blame, took me to her house for safety. After she cooled me down and gave me water, she asked me to share what had happened as much as I was comfortable with. After hearing what had happened, Lillian thought of a way to get revenge on Anthony, and when she returned to my house, where they were still enjoying the barbecue, she briefly explained to her daughters about me, and then told them how she felt and how she wanted to get revenge. Both Stella and Nora agreed with Lillian's desire to get revenge, so the three of them went to Nora's room to have a strategy meeting and sort out the situation, leaving their husbands in good spirits. Nora told me that Anthony would often lose his temper and get hard on me if something didn't suit him, and that he would often lock me in the closet or storeroom. I'm sure Lillian was shocked to hear something even worse than what I had discussed. It's common for people to have a facade, but the extent of Anthony's duplicity was hard to accept. Regaining their composure, they decided the revenge should utilize the girl's skills. The plan involved combining Stella's hairdressing practice mannequin head with Nora's dressmaking mannequin to create a seemingly real figure. The key was setting the head to easily fall off, anticipating Anthony's impatient handling, likely resulting in a fright, especially with alcohol involved. They adorned the mannequins with wigs and fabric to enhance the human appearance, then set it up in the shed. Though the figure ended up taller than me, it might add to the fright. As a final touch, they placed a wide-brimmed hat on it, leaving Stella and Nora hidden outside. Lillian returned to the garden, suggesting cleanup, then followed Anthony to the shed and closed the door behind him. Anthony, unaware of the plot, couldn't understand why Lillian had locked him in. Continuously, he pleaded,
Let me out.
Lillian returned to her house, brought me along, and asked Dylan to join us in front of the shed, gathering everyone. She then informed Anthony that she was aware of how he had treated me, and demanded he apologize in front of everyone. Furthermore, she stated that until he confessed to all the unjust treatment he had subjected me to, he wouldn't be allowed out. Reluctantly, Anthony began to confess his outdated, authoritarian behavior as a husband, which surprised Dylan the most. It was hard for Dylan to believe that Anthony, who was perfect at work and liked by everyone, could be oppressive and lash out at home. Dylan stood agape, speechless. After Anthony finished his confession, Lillian made eye contact with me and then opened the door. Anthony, drenched in sweat, stumbled out, "I'm sorry," and bowed his head to me, apologizing. However, the looks from those around him were icy. Even Dylan wore an expression of disappointment. Looking down at Anthony, he said, "I had misjudged you." And he left. Stella also expressed her disdain. "Uncle, you're the worst," leaving Anthony unable to lift his head. Nora and I could only watch the entire scene unfold with indescribable expressions. Having never seen Anthony bow to anyone, I was predominantly bewildered. Lillian, as if to add insult to injury, suggested, "Maybe I should call your company about this." Anthony, panicked, quickly looked up and pleaded,
Please, anything but that.
Seeing Anthony genuinely remorseful made me feel sorry for him. "Let's leave it at that," I said to Lillian and started walking to the garden to clean up. This signaled everyone to resume their cleanup tasks. That night, the three of us gathered around the table to talk. I filled the glasses we always use with water and handed one to each before sitting across from Anthony. "Go ahead," I prompted him to speak with a look. Anthony, still hanging his head in shame from displaying such a pitiable state in front of everyone, remained silent initially. After taking a sip of water, he spoke feebly. "Please don't tell the company. I'm up for a promotion. I'll give you the house, and you can do whatever you want with the rest. Please." I wasn't ready and couldn't reply. I was a little shocked that he could abandon his relationship with us so easily. After Anthony said those words, he wandered off somewhere with his head down. Now that Nora and I are alone in the house, I notice that my heart feels lighter. Although worried about where Anthony had gone, the relief of not sharing the same space with him was more profound. Nora, who had been quietly listening, noticed my eased tension and softened expression. "Mom." She looked straight into my eyes and said, "You've been putting up with this all this time, haven't you? I'm already 20, you don't have to anymore. I just want you to stop living a life of endurance." Perhaps Nora found it painful to watch me simply endure. Fearful of Anthony's anger being redirected towards her if she spoke up, I had remained silent, doing my best to bear it. Considering this, I felt both shameful as a mother and deeply touched by Nora's concern. I decided to divorce Anthony and continue living in the house with Nora. The next day, After seeing Nora off, I headed to the law office where Lillian works. Surprised by my prompt action, Lillian smiled understandingly when I explained Nora's encouragement. The lawyer at the office agreed to handle the paperwork and other practical matters after I shared what Anthony had said and our feelings. I intended not to escalate the situation, agreeing not to disclose Anthony's actions to his company as he requested, aiming for a settlement in the divorce that would include compensation and the house. After calling Anthony to discuss the divorce, he agreed without objection, allowing us to settle the divorce amicably. Now, the divorce is finalized, and thanks to the compensation and the house from Anthony, my immediate living situation is secure. However, supporting our life going forward is challenging, so I decided to start working in real estate administration, a field suggested by Lillian. I don't think it will be a problem since I was in an office job when I was working as a company employee. Seeing Nora's smile become more frequent certainly makes me grateful for Lillian, who provided the push I needed at that crucial moment. Being freed from a life of enduring Anthony's anger has truly been a blessing. While I haven't been too concerned about what became of Anthony, rumors have quietly circulated in our gossip-loving community about his lost promotion and subsequent dismissal. Whether true or not, we've kept out of it, especially since we never reported his actions at home to his company. Anyway, today I have an appointment to go out to afternoon tea with Lillian for the first time in a while, so I'm busy getting dressed up. When Anthony was around, I tried to only wear clothes that I didn't mind getting dirty, so it's been a while since I've dressed up as much as I want. Excited, I head to the cafe where Lillian and I agreed to meet. The cafe, buzzing with a diverse clientele, boasts a lively interior adorned with fresh flowers. Meeting up, Lillian and I chose a breezy terrace seat and ordered from the stylish menu. Opting to share a cake set and selecting Earl Grey and Darjeeling teas, we chatted away until our order arrived. Lillian then shared something new.
Did you hear?
She began, recounting a story she'd heard from Dylan about Anthony's fate. It seems a company junior had unwittingly spread the word about Anthony's public apology on the day of the barbecue, catching the ear of the president. Known for valuing family, the infuriated president decided that no matter how competent, an employee who neglects their family doesn't belong in the company, leading to Anthony's dismissal. Lillian squinted her eyes a little and put her hand over her mouth, laughing.
We kept our promise, yet look what happened.
Thinking that divine punishment really does exist, I laughed.
Truly, walls have ears.
And took a sip of my tea, smiling